November 8, 1941. MacDill Army Airfield, Tampa, Florida. Second Lieutenant Michael Collins gripped the controls of the gleaming new Martin B-26 Marauder as it approached the runway at over 130 miles per hour. The aircraft, with its sleek lines and unusually short wingspan, handled nothing like the trainers he had mastered at flight school. His knuckles whitened as he fought to maintain a stable approach. "Too fast," muttered his instructor from the right seat. "You're coming in too damn fast, Lieutenant." Collins tried to bleed off more speed, but the Marauder seemed reluctant to slow. Its thin, high-lift wings generated insufficient drag at low speeds, a design choice made to maximize cruise performance and survivability at the cost of forgiving handling characteristics. The aircraft began to porpoise, nose rising and falling as Collins overcompensated. "I've got it," the instructor said sharply, taking the controls. Even under his experienced hand, the landing was firm, harder than ideal, but safely executed. As they taxied to the hardstand, the instructor turned to Collins, his face grim. "That's the third rough landing today. This bird's nothing like anything you've flown before. Too hot, too heavy, and utterly unforgiving. The boys are calling it the Widowmaker, and if we don't figure out how to tame it, that name's going to stick." He wasn't wrong. Within 6 months, the accident rate for the new bomber would become the worst in the U.S. Army Air Forces, and its reputation would grow so notorious that pilots would create their own dark rhyme, "One a day in Tampa Bay." The sleek Martin B-26 Marauder, designed to be the most advanced medium bomber in the world, was quickly becoming known as a death trap. Yet, 3 years later, this same aircraft would achieve the lowest loss rate of any American bomber in World War II, a transformation that would save thousands of lives and help turn the tide in the European air campaign. This is the story of that remarkable journey from Widowmaker to War Winner. Introduction and context. The Martin B-26 Marauder was born of urgent necessity. In the late 1930s, as war clouds gathered over Europe, the Army Air Corps recognized the need for a new generation of medium bombers, aircraft that could deliver significant bomb loads at high speed while remaining maneuverable enough to evade enemy fighters. When the Army Air Corps issued Circular Proposal No. 40 in January 1939, the Glenn L. Martin Company responded with an ambitious design that pushed the technological envelope. Under the direction of Chief Engineer Peyton Magruder, Martin's team created a revolutionary aircraft around two massive 2,000 horsepower Pratt & Whitney R2800 double wasp engines, the most powerful aircraft engines then available. Magruder's philosophy was simple: speed equals survivability. His design featured a sleek circular fuselage just 6 feet in diameter, the shortest wingspan the Army would approve, and those powerful engines. The result was an aircraft with the highest wing loading, the ratio of weight to wing area, of any American aircraft then in existence. The Army Air Corps was impressed enough to skip the prototype stage entirely, ordering 1,091 aircraft straight from the drawing board, an extraordinary vote of confidence in both Martin and Magruder. The first production B-26 rolled off the assembly line in November 1940, just 18 months after design work began. At first glance, the Marauder was impressive. Its sleek, torpedo-like fuselage housed a crew of 7 and up to 4,000 pounds of bombs. Its twin engines could propel it to a maximum speed of 315 miles per hour, faster than many fighters of the era. With a defensive armament of up to 1250 caliber machine guns, the B-26 seemed ideally suited to survive in the increasingly dangerous skies over Europe. But the same design choices that made the Marauder fast also made it difficult to fly. Its wing loading of 53 pounds per square foot compared to 39 for the B-17 Flying Fortress, meant exceptionally high takeoff and landing speeds. Pilots accustomed to more forgiving aircraft found the B-26 demanded precision flying at all times, especially during the critical phases of takeoff and landing. The problems became apparent almost immediately. The first fatal crash occurred during early testing at Martin's plant. When the aircraft began arriving at operational training units in early 1941, the accident rate quickly became alarming. At MacDill Field in Florida, where most B-26 crew training took place, crashes became so common that dark humor spread among the trainees. Captain Merle Satre, an instructor pilot at MacDill, later recalled, "We lost 14 aircraft and crews in a single month during early training." The Marauder was unquestionably the hottest aircraft in the Army's inventory, not just in terms of performance, but in the danger it presented to inexperienced pilots. It was blindingly fast for its time, but speed came at a price. That price was paid in lives. Between November 1941 and March 1943, training accidents claimed dozens of aircraft and hundreds of airmen. The situation deteriorated to the point that in early 1943, Senator Harry Truman's Special Committee to investigate the National Defense Program launched an investigation into the B-26 program, questioning whether the aircraft was fundamentally flawed and should be canceled entirely. The aircraft's nicknames reflected the growing concern: the Flying Coffin, the Widowmaker, the Baltimore Whore, because, as pilots grimly joked, she had no visible means of support, referring to the short wings. Most infamous was the rhyme, "One a day in Tampa Bay," referencing the crash rate at MacDill Field. Brigadier General Samuel C. Eaton, Jr., commander of the Army Air Force's Southeast Training Center, faced mounting pressure to address the problem. In February 1942, he made a fateful decision, assigning then-Colonel Jimmy Doolittle to evaluate the aircraft and determine its future. Doolittle, already famous for his racing and test pilot career, and soon to achieve immortality leading the Tokyo raid, spent several weeks flying the Marauder extensively. His conclusion was straightforward. "There's nothing wrong with this airplane that better training won't fix. It's hot, but it's good." This vote of confidence from America's most famous pilot temporarily saved the program. But the real challenges still lay ahead. The B-26 would need to prove itself not just trainable, but survivable in the crucible of combat. Planning and expectations. August 5, 1942. Bowling Field, Washington, D.C., Major General Ira C. Eaker, newly appointed commander of the 8th Air Force, studied the reports spread across his desk with growing concern. The early combat record of the B-26 Marauder in the Pacific and North Africa showed disturbing patterns. During low-altitude attacks, the fast but unmaneuverable bomber proved vulnerable to anti-aircraft fire. In the Pacific, the 22nd Bomb Group had lost several B-26s during the Battle of the Coral Sea while attempting to torpedo Japanese ships, a role for which the aircraft had never been designed. Eaker faced a critical decision. The 8th Air Force was building up in England for the strategic bombing campaign against Nazi Germany. The Marauder was scheduled to form a significant component of the medium bomber force, but its troubling accident rate and early combat losses raised serious questions about its viability. "We can't afford to send these boys to war in an aircraft they don't believe in," Eaker told his staff. "And we certainly can't afford to lose them to accidents before they even face the enemy." What followed was one of the most remarkable transformations in military aviation history. A comprehensive re-evaluation of how the B-26 was to be used, how crews would be trained, and even how the aircraft itself would be modified. This process would ultimately save the Marauder program and transform a problematic aircraft into one of the most effective weapons in the American arsenal. The first critical change came in pilot training. Lieutenant Colonel Arthur B. McDaniel, a veteran pilot with extensive multi-engine experience, was tasked with revamping the B-26 training program at MacDill Field. McDaniel's approach was revolutionary. Instead of treating the Marauder as just another bomber, he approached it as if it were a high-performance fighter. "Gentlemen, Fiki," McDaniel told his instructor staff, "we've been teaching these pilots to fly the B-26 like it's a B-18 or a B-24. It's not. It's the hottest thing on two engines, and we need to train accordingly." McDaniel instituted rigorous new training protocols. Pilot candidates now needed at least 1,000 hours of flight time before transitioning to the Marauder, double the previous requirement. Training included extensive simulator time focused specifically on emergency procedures. Most importantly, McDaniel developed a set of precise flying techniques tailored to the Marauder's unique characteristics. 3 inches of manifold pressure above your airspeed. That's your margin, McDaniel instructed pilots. Below that, you're courting a stall. Above that, you're wasting fuel and engine life. The results were immediate and dramatic. By mid-1942, the accident rate at MacDill had dropped by 70%. The rhyme, "One a day in Tampa Bay," was gradually replaced with a new saying, "Train on a 26, and you can fly anything with wings." Meanwhile, the Martin Company was not standing still. Under pressure from the Army Air Forces, Martin engineers implemented a series of modifications to make the aircraft more forgiving. The wingspan was increased from 65 feet on early models to 71 feet on the B-26B series, reducing wing loading and improving low-speed handling. The vertical stabilizer was enlarged to improve directional stability. Perhaps most importantly, new churchyard flaps, named because they were the last thing to leave the aircraft, provided better slow-speed lift. Glenn Martin personally supervised these modifications, telling his engineering staff, "Gentlemen, we've built a thoroughbred when the Army needed a workhorse. Now we need to make this thoroughbred pull a plow without breaking its legs." Colonel Robert Stillman, tasked with preparing the first B-26 groups for deployment to England, worked closely with both McDaniel and Martin to ensure the lessons learned in training were incorporated into combat units. "We're building this airplane's reputation twice," Stillman told his group commanders. "First, we have to convince our own crews that it won't kill them. Then we have to convince the Germans that it will kill them." By early 1943, the transformation was well underway. The accident rate had been reduced to levels comparable with other combat aircraft. Crew confidence was growing as they mastered the specialized techniques required to fly the Marauder safely. But the true test would come in combat over Europe, where the Luftwaffe and German flak batteries would be far less forgiving than training fields in Florida. Intelligence and Preparations. December 12, 1943. Allied Force Headquarters, Algiers, Algeria. Brigadier General Robert Stillman, now commanding the 9th Air Force's medium bomber groups, spread aerial reconnaissance photographs across the conference table. The images showed the devastation wrought by B-26 Marauders against German positions in Sicily and Italy. Bridges collapsed, supply dumps in flames, airfields cratered. "The results speak for themselves, gentlemen," Stillman told the assembled intelligence officers. When employed at medium altitude with proper fighter escort, the Marauder is proving remarkably effective and survivable. The intelligence assessments compiled from the Mediterranean theater were changing perceptions of the once maligned bomber. In the 7 months since Marauders had entered combat in that theater, they had achieved a loss rate of approximately 1.5% per mission, significantly better than the 4% rate experienced by B-17s flying the strategic bombing campaign against Germany. What had changed was not just the aircraft, but how it was employed. Through painful trial and error, air commanders had discovered the Marauders' optimal combat envelope. Attacks from medium altitude, between 10,000 and 15,000 feet, rather than the low-level attacks initially attempted in the Pacific and North Africa. Colonel Wilson Wood, an intelligence officer who had analyzed hundreds of mission reports, summarized the findings. The B-26 combines three critical attributes. It's fast enough to minimize time in the target area, it's stable enough to deliver bombs accurately from medium altitude, and it's tough enough to absorb battle damage and return home. When properly employed, it's proving to be one of our most effective tactical bombers. As planning proceeded for the invasion of Normandy, the role of the B-26 expanded. 9 bomb groups equipped with Marauders would form the backbone of the 9th Air Force's Medium Bomber Command, the largest concentration of B-26 in any theater. Their mission would be to systematically destroy the transportation infrastructure in northern France, isolating the invasion beaches from German reinforcement. The scale of this operation required precise intelligence and meticulous planning. Target selection became a science unto itself. German rail yards, bridges, marshalling yards, and supply dumps were photographed, analyzed, and prioritized. Scale models of key targets were built to brief crews. Weather patterns over the English Channel and northern France were studied to predict optimal attack conditions. Lieutenant Colonel Robert Stilwell, leading the 9th Air Force's operational planning staff, developed new tactics specifically for the Marauder groups. We're refining the box formation to maximize defensive firepower while minimizing vulnerability to flak, he explained to group commanders. 12 aircraft in 4 flights of 3, stacked diagonally for mutual support and optimal bombing concentration. Behind these tactical innovations lay a sophisticated intelligence operation. The Allied Central Interpretation Unit at RAF Medmenham analyzed thousands of reconnaissance photographs daily, identifying targets and assessing damage from previous raids. Ultra intercepts, decoded German communications from the Enigma machine, provided insights into the effectiveness of bombing campaigns and German defensive responses. This intelligence revealed a surprising development. The Germans were beginning to fear the Marauder. Luftwaffe pilot interrogations showed they considered the B-26 exceptionally difficult to intercept due to its speed and tight formation discipline. German anti-aircraft battery commanders reported that the Marauders' medium-altitude approach made it challenging to track and engage effectively. A captured German intelligence assessment from February 1944 stated, "The American B-26 represents a significant threat to our transportation network. Its combination of speed, bomb load, and accuracy makes it particularly effective against precision targets such as bridges and rail junctions. Anti-aircraft batteries should prioritize engagement of this aircraft type whenever encountered." For the air crews preparing for the coming campaign, this intelligence provided much-needed confidence. The aircraft they had once feared was now feared by the enemy. Major David Thomas, a squadron commander in the 323rd Bomb Group, expressed the changing sentiment. "We've gone from wondering if we'd survive training to knowing we have one of the best chances of surviving combat. The Marauder has gone from Widowmaker to lifesaver." As 1943 turned to 1944, the stage was set for the Marauder to play a decisive role in the coming invasion of Europe. The aircraft that Congress had nearly canceled a year earlier was now poised to prove its worth in the largest amphibious operation in military history. Opening actions, March 14, 1944. RAF Great Dunmow, Essex, England. The pre-dawn briefing room of the 386th Bomb Group was filled with tension as crews studied the wall maps showing the day's target. A critical railway bridge at Saumur, France. The bridge carried the main rail line connecting southern France to the Normandy region. a line that German forces would need for reinforcement once the invasion began. Colonel Loris Norstad, commanding the 386th, pointed to the heavily defended areas around the target. Intelligence indicates 38 heavy flak guns in the target area, gentlemen. The Luftwaffe has been reinforcing air defenses along the Loire River, which tells us these bridges are as important to them as they are to us. Captain Richard Wayne, a veteran pilot on his 23rd mission, studied the approach path. The mission would take them deep into occupied France, beyond the range of the shorter-legged P-47 Thunderbolt fighters. Only the newer P-51 Mustangs could provide escort all the way to the target and back. We'll have Mustangs from the 354th Fighter Group providing cover, Norstad continued, but expect aggressive Luftwaffe response. This target is too important for them to ignore. As dawn broke over the English countryside, 48 B-26 Marauders from the 386th Bomb Group lined up on the runway at Great Dunmow. Each aircraft carried 4 1,000-pound bombs, the maximum load for the range required. The distinctive roar of 96 Pratt & Whitney R2800 engines shattered the morning calm as the formation took off in rapid sequence. In the lead aircraft, Wayne advanced the throttles smoothly, feeling the powerful surge as the Marauder accelerated down the runway. At 130 miles per hour, he eased back on the control yoke, and the bomber lifted cleanly into the gray English sky. 3 years of design refinements and training innovations had transformed the once deadly takeoff characteristics into a manageable, if still demanding, procedure. "Gear up! Flaps up!" Wayne ordered his co-pilot, Lieutenant Robert Milner. "Let's join the formation." Across the airfields of eastern England, the scene was repeated as Marauder groups from the 9th Air Force launched their portions of the coordinated attack. By 8:30 in the morning, over 200 B-26s were crossing the English Channel in regimented formations, their contrails etching white lines against the blue spring sky. German radar operators along the French coast tracked the incoming formations with growing alarm. The speed of the approaching aircraft, nearly 300 miles per hour, identified them as Marauders rather than the slower B-17 or B-24 heavy bombers. Warning calls went out to Luftwaffe fighter bases and flak battery commanders along the projected route. Captain Heinrich Müller, commanding a Luftwaffe intercept squadron of Focke-Wulf 190s near Tours, received the alert with frustration. "Marauders again," he told his pilots during their hasty briefing. "They'll be at 14,000 feet, moving fast. We'll have to hit them head-on, or we won't catch them at all." The German pilots had learned to respect the Marauder. Unlike the larger formations of heavy bombers that relied primarily on massed defensive firepower, the B-26 groups combined speed with tight formation discipline and exceptional gunnery. Muller had lost 2 pilots the previous week attempting to attack a Marauder formation from the rear quarter. As the Marauder formations crossed into France, the first signs of opposition appeared. Black puffs of flak blossomed around the lead boxes, the German gunners attempting to bracket the formation with curtains of steel fragments. The B-26 pilots responded with practiced discipline, maintaining tight formation while making subtle altitude and heading changes to confuse the flak predictors. In Wayne's aircraft, the tension was palpable as they penetrated deeper into hostile territory. His bombardier, Lieutenant Frank Doyle, prepared the Norden bomb site, inputting wind corrections and target elevation. Radio operator Staff Sergeant William Cohen maintained a steady stream of updates on fighter positions, both friendly and hostile. "Bandits, 10 o'clock high," called out the top turret gunner. "Looks like 15-plus FW-190s. The German fighters came in fast, diving from 17,000 feet in a coordinated frontal attack designed to break up the bomber formation before they reached the target. But they were met by the P-51 Mustang escort, which dove to intercept. The sky erupted in chaos as fighters maneuvered for advantage. The Marauder gunners tracked the few German fighters that broke through the Mustang screen, their .50 caliber machine guns hammering out long bursts of defensive fire. The formation held steady despite the assault, another testament to how far the Marauder force had come since its troubled beginnings. 5 minutes to target, Doyle announced from the bombardier's position. I have visual identification of the bridge. The Saumur Railway Bridge appeared through breaks in the clouds, a vital link spanning the Loire River. German flak batteries concentrated their fire as the bombardiers in the lead aircraft synchronized their Norden bomb sights on the structure. Bombs away! The release of 4,000 pounds of explosives caused Wayne's aircraft to lurch upward slightly. Across the formation, bomb bay doors opened and heavy demolition bombs fell toward the target below. The first wave of bombs struck precisely at the southern approach to the bridge, cratering the rail lines and destroying the switching station. The second wave hit the bridge itself, several direct hits severing the central span. The final wave targeted the northern approach, completing the destruction of the rail junction. As the formation turned for home, the crews could see the results of their precision bombing. The bridge was completely severed, with sections collapsed into the Loire River. Smoke rose from burning railway cars and the destroyed switching station. The vital transportation link had been cut. The return flight proved the Marauders' other great advantage: speed as a defensive asset. The formation maintained 280 miles per hour at 14,000 feet, a pace that made pursuit by most Luftwaffe interceptors difficult without a significant altitude advantage. By the time they recrossed the English Channel, the formation had suffered only minor damage to 3 aircraft, with no losses. When the Marauders landed back at Great Dunmow that afternoon, the mission was already being hailed as a textbook example of medium bomber operations. Reconnaissance photographs confirmed complete destruction of the target with minimal collateral damage to the surrounding town, precision that would have been impossible from the higher altitudes flown by heavy bombers. Colonel Norstad gathered his crew leaders for the debriefing, satisfaction evident in his expression. Gentlemen, today's mission is exactly why the Marauder has become our primary medium bomber. 3 years ago, this aircraft was killing its own crews. Today, it's killing the enemy's ability to move reinforcements while bringing our crews home safely. The transformation was nearly complete. The aircraft, once known as the Flying Coffin, was now demonstrating its true potential as the Allies prepared for the largest amphibious invasion in history. The Marauder had found its niche: medium-altitude precision bombing with a focus on transportation targets, and was excelling in ways that even its designers hadn't fully anticipated. As spring 1944 progressed toward the planned invasion of Normandy, the Marauder groups systematically dismantled the transportation network of northern France. Railway bridges, marshalling yards, ammunition dumps, and fuel depots fell to precision bombing from the once maligned aircraft. The stage was being set for the Marauder's finest hour, and its final validation as one of the most effective bombers of World War II. 2. The critical moment, June 6, 1944. Normandy, France. Dawn broke over the English Channel as hundreds of Allied aircraft filled the skies above the invasion beaches. Among them, 18 groups of B-26 Marauders, over 500 aircraft, prepared to deliver the critical pre-invasion bombardment of German defensive positions. Major William Lanford of the 322nd Bomb Group checked his watch as his formation approached the French coast. His squadron had the vital task of neutralizing a heavily fortified German gun battery overlooking Omaha Beach, a position that could devastate landing craft if left operational. 3 minutes to target, his bombardier announced. "I have visual confirmation of the gun emplacements." Through breaks in the cloud cover, Blanford could see the massive invasion fleet below. Thousands of ships stretching to the horizon. The responsibility weighed heavily. The lives of countless infantrymen depended on their accuracy. "Remember your training," Blanford told his crew over the intercom. "This is why we spent all those hours practicing precision bombing. Those boys on the beach are counting on us." At precisely 5:45, the Marauder formations began their bomb runs. Attacking from 12,000 feet, the optimal altitude for accuracy while minimizing exposure to light flak, they delivered their payloads with unprecedented precision. Across the invasion front, German gun emplacements, communication centers, and defensive strongpoints erupted in smoke and flame. What followed was the defining moment in the Marauders' combat history. Throughout D-Day and the critical week that followed, B-26 groups flew over 400 sorties with a loss rate of less than 1%. Extraordinary by any standard. More importantly, bomb damage assessment showed that over 70% of assigned targets were neutralized, a success rate that saved countless Allied lives on the beaches. Lieutenant General Louis Brereton, commanding the 9th Air Force, would later write in his after-action report, "The performance of the B-26 Marauder groups during the invasion was nothing short of remarkable. The accuracy achieved from medium altitude, combined with the aircraft's ability to evade enemy defenses through speed and formation discipline, validated every modification and training innovation we've implemented over the past 2 years." For the German defenders, the Marauders' transformation became painfully apparent during those critical days. Oberstleutnant Anton Weiler, commanding a flak regiment near Caen, described the challenge in his war diary. "The American B-26 formations are particularly difficult targets. They approach at high speed, maintain tight discipline, and release their bombs with disturbing accuracy. By the time our gunners establish a proper firing solution, they have already delivered their payloads and begun their escape. We simply cannot engage them effectively with our current equipment." What made this success even more remarkable was the historical context. Less than 2 years earlier, many had called for the entire Marauder program to be scrapped. Now, on the most important day of the war, it was proving itself not merely adequate, but exceptional. As the invasion forces pushed inland, Marauder groups shifted to interdiction missions, severing German supply lines and preventing reinforcements from reaching the front. The aircraft that had once been deemed too difficult to fly was now the workhorse of tactical bombing operations, flying multiple missions daily with remarkable reliability. Immediate aftermath and perspective, August 12, 1944. 9th Air Force Headquarters, France. Major General Samuel Anderson, commanding the 9th Air Force Bomber Command, studied the statistical analysis spread across his field desk. 2 months after D-Day, the numbers told a story that few would have believed in 1942. "Confirm these figures," Anderson instructed his intelligence officer. "I want to be absolutely certain before we distribute this report." The officer nodded. "Sir, we've triple-checked everything. The B-26 groups have maintained a loss rate of 0.5% per mission over the past 60 days, the lowest of any combat aircraft in the European theater. They've flown over 6,000 sorties and delivered more than 15,000 tons of bombs on target." The transformation was complete. The aircraft once known as the Flying Coffin now had the lowest loss rate of any American bomber in the war. The statistics defied all expectations, particularly those of the congressional investigators who had nearly terminated the program 18 months earlier. Across the makeshift airfields of liberated France, Marauder crews developed a new appreciation for their aircraft. Staff Sergeant James Miller, a tail gunner with the 387th Bomb Group, recorded in his diary, "It's remarkable how our attitude toward the B-26 has changed. When I first joined the squadron, the old-timers told horror stories about training crashes. Now, we swear by this airplane. It's fast enough to evade most fighters, tough enough to take battle damage, and accurate enough to put bombs exactly where they need to go. Most importantly, it brings us home." Captain Michael Collins, the young pilot who had struggled with his first Marauder landing back in 1941, now commanded a squadron in the 394th Bomb Group. After his 50th mission, he wrote to his former instructor, "Remember when you told me this airplane would either kill me or make me a better pilot? You were right about the latter. The demanding nature of the B-26 forced us to become more precise, more disciplined aviators. The skills required to master the Marauder have kept my entire squadron alive through some of the worst flak in France." The improved safety record stemmed from multiple factors, all part of the aircraft's remarkable evolution. The technical modifications to the airframe had increased stability without significantly reducing performance. The enhanced training programs ensured crews were thoroughly prepared for the Marauder's unique characteristics. Perhaps most importantly, tactical employment had been refined to match the aircraft's strengths. Medium-altitude precision bombing rather than low-level attack. German prisoners provided further validation. Luftwaffe fighter pilot Hans Weber, shot down near St. Lo in July 1944, told interrogators, "We considered the B-26 the most difficult American bomber to intercept. Its speed made pursuit challenging, and its tight formations created formidable defensive fire. Unlike the B-17s, which we could track visually for many minutes, the Marauder formations were often past our intercept points before we could establish an effective attack position." Strategic consequences. By autumn 1944, the Marauder's strategic impact had become undeniable. 9 bomb groups equipped with B-26s had systematically dismantled the German transportation network throughout France and the Low Countries, preventing the Wehrmacht from effectively responding to Allied advances. Major General Otto Desloch, commander of Luftflotte 3 opposing the Allied advance, summarized the effect in a report to Berlin. "The systematic destruction of our rail network by American medium bombers has created an insurmountable logistical crisis. Our ability to move reserves to threatened sectors has been reduced by 70% since June. Ammunition, fuel, and replacement equipment cannot reach forward units in sufficient quantities. This transportation paralysis has been more decisive than direct combat losses in undermining our defensive capabilities." The Marauder's precision proved particularly valuable as Allied forces approached civilian population centers. While heavy bombers conducted area bombing of industrial targets, B-26 groups specialized in striking specific military objectives with minimal collateral damage: rail junctions, bridges, supply dumps, and command centers. General Dwight D. Eisenhower, Supreme Allied Commander, recognized this contribution in a September 1944 memorandum. "The precision bombing capabilities of our medium bomber forces have been instrumental in maintaining our momentum while minimizing civilian casualties. Their ability to sever enemy supply lines without destroying the surrounding communities has both military and political value as we liberate occupied territories." The statistics by year's end were remarkable. Marauder groups had flown over 29,000 sorties, delivered 73,000 tons of bombs, and maintained a loss rate of approximately 0.5% per mission, a figure that would have seemed impossible during the aircraft's troubled early development. Colonel Wilson R. Wood, who had analyzed the B-26's performance for Army Air Forces headquarters, submitted his final assessment in December 1944. The Martin B-26 Marauder represents perhaps the most successful transformation of any combat aircraft in military history. From an airframe with unacceptable accident rates to the safest medium bomber in the theater, its evolution demonstrates the critical importance of iterative improvement in both technology and training methodology. This transformation carried broader lessons for American military aviation. The willingness to adapt, rather than abandon, a promising but problematic design had created an exceptionally effective weapon system. The comprehensive approach to solving the Marauder's issues, addressing everything from wing design to pilot training to tactical employment, became a model for future aircraft development programs. Epilogue, May 1, 1945. South of Hamburg, Germany. Lieutenant Colonel Richard Wayne, now commanding a squadron in the 386th Bomb Group, led the final B-26 combat mission of the European War. As his formation struck a German supply depot near Hamburg, he reflected on the extraordinary journey of both the aircraft and its crews. 3 years earlier, the Marauder had been fighting for its survival, its reputation so tarnished that congressional investigation threatened its very existence. Now, it concluded its combat career with the distinction of having the lowest loss rate of any American bomber in the European theater, less than 0.5% per sortie. In his final mission report, Wayne wrote, "It seems fitting that the Marauder, which so many once refused to fly, ended up being the aircraft we most wanted to fly. Its evolution from problem child to premier precision bomber stands as testament to American engineering, training innovation, and the adaptability of our air crews." The statistics told the story. By war's end, B-26 groups had flown more than 129,000 sorties and delivered more than 199,000 tons of bombs while maintaining the lowest loss rate among all U.S. bombers. Of the more than 5,000 Marauders built, only 921 were lost in combat or accidents, less than 19%, compared to 41% for the B-17 Flying Fortress. As the aircraft were gradually withdrawn from service following VE Day, the Marauder's legacy was secured not just in military aviation history, but in the broader narrative of American industrial adaptation. The transformation from Widowmaker to war winner demonstrated the nation's capacity to identify problems, implement solutions, and persevere through initial setbacks. Perhaps the most telling epitaph came from a German perspective. Generalleutnant Adolf Galland, former commander of the Luftwaffe fighter force, stated during post-war interrogation, "We feared the B-17s for their defensive firepower, but we respected the B-26 for their near-invulnerability to interception. Their combination of speed, formation discipline, and precision made them extraordinarily difficult targets. When we saw Marauders on our radar, many fighter pilots simply accepted that the target would be hit before effective interception could be established." The story of the B-26 Marauder remains a compelling testament to the power of persistence and adaptation. An aircraft nearly cancelled for its dangerous characteristics became, through technical modification and training innovation, one of the most effective and survivable combat aircraft of World War II. Major General Samuel E. Anderson, who commanded the 9th Air Force's medium bombers during the critical campaigns of 1944, perhaps summarized it best in his post-war assessment. The B-26 taught us an invaluable lesson: that initial failure need not dictate final outcome. The willingness to identify problems, implement solutions, and persevere through difficulty transformed a potential disaster into a remarkable success. The aircraft, once called the Flying Coffin,